everyone. Welcome to Truth in the Barrel. I'm Amy McGrath with my co-host Denver Riggleman, and today we are talking about Greenland. Why? Why would we be talking about Greenland? Because our president has repeatedly signaled interest in taking over the largest island in the world. And so you might think that's wild and crazy, but we need to talk about this. But before we do, Den,
it's just
share
so
what you're drinking today.
I have to share what I'm drinking, but I tell you, Amy, it's so good. I don't know why it just feels good today. It feels really good today, and I want to applaud you for everything you've done to prepare for our Greenland show, and I know we're going to get to that, and I can't wait as we talk about it. It's so cool. So in honor of Greenland, I don't even know what Greenland whiskey would be. I have Willet.
Okay.
Oh, my. So I have a Willet, and this is a very rare. So what you're talking about from the Willet family estate, this is a bottle. And Amy, I know you're going to get really excited about this. I've had this on my shelf about 10 years.
Nice.
Right? You can still see the liquid in there, right? This is a very special bottle. You know, I bring out the good stuff for you, Amy. This is a single barrel Willet, right? This was a 13-year bourbon. Okay. This was barrel proof, 125.6. So think about that, 62.8% alcohol in this bad boy, which means after 13 years, you're like, well, Denver, that's really interesting, right? Why is it such high proof? Well, I want to tell people that when you put something in a barrel, like we actually barrel at 105 proof here at Silverback, you get about a 2 to 5% evaporation per year called angel share. After a certain number of years, the proof really starts to rise. Our highest proof out of a barrel so far has been 128. We might have hit close to 130, but it depends on the evaporation on that specific barrel. So just to let all of our listeners know, in a bourbon barrel, when you put the distillate in the barrel, all the color comes from the barrel, but it actually proofs up based on evaporation. So this might have been in the barrel at 105 to 110.
Now it's higher.
13 years. Now it's much higher. And that's based on the evaporation in the barrel, the way that it transfers, the ester transfer, and the sugar transfer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it. I'm going to pour it. Now this is high proof, right? I feel like, was it Bobby Boucher? This is some high proof H2O, right? Or whatever. But this is some high proof whiskey, right? I got it in the Silverback glass because, of course, we've done Christine's whiskeys. So I'm going to give it a little taste right now.
All right.
Oh, my goodness. I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting. By the way, there was only 125 bottles of this in the world. So we got bottle number 35. So bottle 35, 13-year-old Willet. It's an estate bottled single barrel bourbon, aged 13 years. And that is how we're starting today. And bottled, Willet Distillery, Bardstown, Kentucky. Cheers to you, Amy.
Cheers. All right. Ooh. Well, we got to get into it, though, Den, because this is our deep dive, our Devil's Cut episode. And today we're talking about Greenland. Now, Donald Trump has proposed buying Greenland in his first term. But now he's sort of ratcheted it up, right? He's talked about, quote, we're going to have Greenland one way or another. We're going to get it. That's what he said. He said, we'll get Greenland, 100%. And he hasn't ruled out taking Greenland by force, by the use of force. So you might think, well, that's just another one of Trump's wild ideas, right? Well, he's had a lot of wild ideas that he's actually followed through with. And that's why we need to talk about it. Now, when Trump says that Greenland is very much vital to U.S. national security interests, he's not wrong about that, right? And so what are some of the national security interests that we might have in that very large Arctic island?
You know, it goes back to, Amy, really our backgrounds. You know, people might tune in this as a political show, but if they looked at our bios, they would understand that before we were into politics, we had real jobs with real service to the United States of America. I was first introduced to Greenland in 1993. I was 23 years old. And I worked on C-141s. I was a Mustang. I was prior enlisted and then an officer. and I was an avionics and radar specialist on C-141 airlifters, right, which we called rubber dog vomit haulers. But we did some incredible things, and went all around the world in these C-141s. And we could tell those stories, me and you, over one of our bourbons later. But what I had to do was, since I worked avionics, is I had to test our HF radios, our long-range HF. So, in 93, that was a backup communication system. So we would check things called like the ionization bounces or how far we could actually reach. So guess what I had to do? Tule. This is right. This is tail number 142, right? Comms check, right? And on Thule.
And Thule was the name of the U.S. Air Force Base then. We're going to talk about that.
And Thule would answer back, "We got you 5x5, right? Great to talk to you today." And it got to the point I actually knew the person on the other end after 2 to 3 years of doing this. Amy, it's sort of cool, right?
I bet.
So I'm talking to Thule. I don't think people realize, when you're talking about Thule and where it is geographically, and the reason why we had Air Force bases there, why it was so important in World War II, is based on its proximity to not only specific areas in Europe and our enemies, but also to waterways, right? And the fact is that when you have certain types of aircraft and armaments there, it makes it much easier for us to strategically to hit specific targets, but also here's the big thing for us, it was resupply, right? So now, it's such an important area when you're talking about Greenland, when you're talking about the North. Now, break, we have an incredible relationship with Greenland. As you know, we've had for a long, long time. We have other areas there that sort of, serve the same function. So Greenland is important, but it's already an ally. It's already somewhere that we actually leverage. So it's been sort of interesting to hear Donald Trump talking about maybe even taking a country by force, especially with America based on self-determination. It does feel like we're a bit of the baddies when he talks like that, when we already have this great relationship. We already know the strategic importance. I'm very familiar with it. But it is a little bit interesting since we already have it that we're having these type of discussions.
Well, and Greenland is a protectorate right now of Denmark. And Denmark is our longtime ally. But strategically for the United States, you're absolutely right. We have had a presence there for the last 80 some years.
Correct.
In Thule, which is now called
Pawtucket Air Base.
Okay, thank you, Air Base. And that's also important because we have early warning radar systems, right? If you're going to launch an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile from Russia, it is going to come over the Arctic Circle, right? And that's why we have that air base there initially, as well as logistics. Also, Greenland sits strategically in what's called the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap. And so from the Navy side, we have been able to, it's a choke point for Russian naval activity coming out, right? And that is very important. Right. We've had anti-submarine forces in that area. So that's super important. Also, with the climate change, and I know there's a lot of people that don't believe in climate change, but gosh, go to the Arctic Circle and you'll see it for real. Because what's happening is the ice is melting. And so the waterways there are waterways that are opening up from the trade perspective. So merchant ships not necessarily having to go through the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal. In certain times of the year, they could go right over through the waterways that are now opening up. And who controls those waterways is very, very important strategically. The United States only has two. The U.S. Coast Guard only has two icebreakers. Those are the ships that help escort ships through that waterway. Guess what? Russia has 40 of them. So there's a lot of people that feel like the United States is kind of falling behind in sort of a new race to control, some people would say militarize, the Arctic Circle. And so that is even more of an influence in getting people excited, like Trump, I guess, on the importance of Greenland. But they also have, and you know a lot about this, rare earth minerals that we need in technologies, new technologies.
It's interesting. This almost goes back to Ukraine also, right? And their rare earth minerals, especially when you're talking about uranium. But the importance, when you're looking at the importance of a specific area, doesn't automatically preclude that we already have areas like Alaska, Iceland, and other areas that sort of serve some of those functions. And I think, when you look at Thule/Patuxent, I always say Thule right off the bat because that's all I dealt with when I was Air Force. You know what I mean, Amy, was Thule. When you're looking at Patuxent Air Base now, there's one thing I want to tell the American peoples we're talking to them, Amy, and I know this is going to be pretty profound. I hope you're ready for this, Amy. We're already there. I know.
Yeah.
This is naughty. We're already there.
And that's the thing. We don't need to take it over. We have been given access to the areas that we need, and Patuxent Space Base and all of the other places that they have allowed. And Denmark is our ally. It's our ally. This is stupid, and we don't need to own it to trade with the people there for minerals. Well, I mean, if you're smart, right?
Yeah, I think it's the squirrel-like brain of Trump, right? It's the shiny object that he's looking at, Amy, right now. It's a distraction based on the real issues that we're having geopolitically, right, across this globe right now. Russia, Ukraine, Iran, Yemen. Let me go right down. Israel, right? Israel, Palestine. There's a lot bigger problem. There's a lot. It's just a ridiculous notion of us, a country that was built on self-determination, that we would militarily take over an ally's, territory or a place that's nominally, right, as you said, a protectorate, but it's independent, a country that can vote for independence anytime. How dare us as Americans who tout our constitutional values?
And by the way, it's against international law. And by the way, it would be giving a green light to Russia to just take over. I mean, Russia has its sights on certain islands in the Arctic that are controlled by Norway. It would give a green light for them to do what they're doing, not, again in Ukraine, but also elsewhere in the Arctic. How about China? China's going to look at Taiwan and be like, well, the United States took over Greenland. Let's just take over Taiwan.
God, the greatest thing we talk about, Amy, is the cascading effects of decision-making at a policy level, especially if it's based on fantasy like the Trump administration likes to live in.
But here's another thing that's happened that kind of got a little bit of news. Vice President J.D. Vance, and I won't say what I really think about him, but he went up to Greenland and gave what I consider a very offensive speech. He said, quote, "Our message to Denmark is very simple. You have not done a good job by the people of Greenland. You have underinvested in the people of Greenland, and you have underinvested in the security of this incredible, beautiful landmass," which is totally not true. And the base commander, he gave this speech up at the space base, which is, for people listening, is in the very northwest corner of Greenland. I mean, you cannot get more remote of a base. It is America's most remote, northernmost base in the world. Very cold, very isolated. He goes up there, he gives this offensive speech in front of American troops, airmen, Greenlanders, Danes, Danish, Canadians, all of these people that, oh, by the way, have to work together in this very remote place, doing in a very harsh environment. It's basically like they're living on a ship, right? They're sort of so isolated. He goes up there, gives an offensive speech, leaves, and the base commander, she has to command all these people for the next couple of years. And so she writes an email that basically says, "I've thought a lot about what our vice president said, and I don't believe that what he said is reflective of the people in this base." And she was fired. And, and a lot of the right wingers are, laughing about this. I actually think she had a ton of courage.
Amy, both of us are military officers, or were. There does come a time where you have to do what's right. where integrity trumps just about everything. And I think she showed incredible integrity and courage to do that. I also think we do have a rule of law. We do have codes. We do have things that all of us live by, whether it's legally, ethically, morally. It's a compass that we sort of all hold internally. But as military officers and as military people, enlisted and officers, we give away some of those freedoms based on the fact that we took the oath, right, to follow the laws of those who are dutifully appointed above us. As you know, we've taken those oaths multiple times. I think what she did showed incredible courage, and she paid a price for it, Amy.
Yeah.
Right. You know?
Yeah.
Paid a real price for it. So I think right now, I feel that person right now, if I'm at a bar, she would never buy a drink if I'm there.
Absolutely. There's two more things that I'd like to bring up in this discussion. One is a little bit of the history of United States military presence in Greenland that I did not know until I started studying nuclear weapons. But 57 years ago, in 1968, we had a B-52 during an operation called Chrome Dome, where you probably are familiar with this, Denver. During the Cold War, we had nuclear weapons flying at all times, nuclear bombs up in the air flying at all times. And we had a B-52 flying over Thule.
Yep, Thule.
Thank you. Yep. The air base up there. And one of the crew members stuffed a seat cushion in the heater of the B-52. It caught fire. And so they had to eject because there was smoke in the cockpit, too much smoke. They couldn't see anymore. And this particular B-52 had 4 thermonuclear hydrogen bombs on board. They all ejected. They all lived except for one crew member did not live past the ejection. But the B-52 broke up and all 4 nuclear bombs, none of them detonated, thankfully, but their nuclear material was scattered all over the place. And Greenland at that time did not know that the United States was flying nuclear bombs above their territory. And so it was an interesting time because the United States, it was revealed that we were doing this, and the people there were not super happy about that. So we have a long-standing history with Greenland. It hasn't always been good. We did find most of the material and cleaned up most of the nuclear material from that accident. But, it's not all of it. Some of it is still up there.
It's probably some old guy in the north of Greenland in a hut, and he found some of this material, and he's like, what's weird? I never have to pay for electricity. My hut is always lit.
Yeah, a little radioactivity. I know we laugh, but they weren't super happy about that. And the last thing I'll tell you, because you were talking about C-141s earlier, do you know the first aircraft that I jumped out of when I did airborne training was a C-141?
Please,
isn't that cool?
141. That is so cool.
Yeah, it was 141. I don't even think they're flying those things anymore.
No, I remember I was at Pope Air Force Base, No Hope, Pope, right? Adjacent to Fort Bragg, right? Fort Liberty come Fort Bragg. Well, Fort Bragg come Fort Liberty, and then Fort Bragg
again.
Now different Bragg. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. I remember I was in a C-141, and I was the avionics guy that jumps with the Army cats. We're actually on the 141, and I'm sitting there, by the jump area. One of the Army guys goes, "Look at you, man, Air Force, getting able to sit back while we do the real work." And I just remember, I don't know why any of you idiots would jump out of a perfectly good airplane. And I just remember, we're just laughing and drank with them afterwards. But, that's us, right, Amy? And I think as we're going forward, they're talking about what you've done, what I've done. The one thing that we always loved about, the soul of America or the idea of America was self-determination, was that we're free. We value freedom and people being able to make their own decisions over everybody else. And now we have a complete Republican Party that believes we should take away the self-determination of a country based on the whims of somebody who, frankly, could be mentally non-compos mentis. And I think that's the thing that really gets me right now is there's no American, Republican or Democrat, any American in the world that lives, whether they're expats or whatever, that would think that the United States of America should be trying to take by force or to manipulate or to persuade a country into giving up their own independence to become part of what we believe is the United States of America, because then indeed, I think we are the baddies. And there is no way I'm going to ever support an administration where I think we're the baddies and we're acting like the very countries we fought against over our history. And I think that's what really makes me angry.
I can't even believe we're even talking about this.
It's just insane.
One of the things that gets lost in the conversation, because you and I were both Americans, right? We both traveled all around the world, but we see this from very much an American point of view. And you don't hear much from actual people living in Greenland. And so one of the things when we were thinking about this show, we thought, it'd be really cool to talk to somebody there, somebody who grew up there, somebody who knows Greenland, because we're all talking about it back here in the United States, but what do we know? Let's talk to somebody. And we brought in a really great guest today. Her name is Siri Paulsen. She is a sound designer, expert in musicals, operas, and plays. She's a writer and researcher. She's from Greenland, and she's based in Copenhagen, but she is a native expert on Greenland. She's been everywhere in that country, and I cannot wait to talk with her.
Hi.
Hey, there she is.
Siri.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for being on our show.
Of course. Yes,
and you're transmitting from Copenhagen, I think you told me, right, Siri?
That's right.
Oh my gosh! Well, thanks for coming on. And we're going to get right into it because I want to ask you a question. I was watching the 60 Minutes interview on Greenland, and I watched the whole thing, right, with everybody that they were talking to, and they had a pretty interesting statistic. They said that they polled, and they said about 6% of Greenlanders were interested in belonging to the United States. And what I wanted to ask you, based on your background, your extensive, knowledge of the area, do you think that number is about right? Do you think it's 6%? Do you think there's some people that are sort of, not quite sure whether they would want to belong to America? But when you're looking at the number 6% and the real sentiment that's happening in Greenland right now, what is your take? Do you think that number is about right? And with your knowledge of the area, do you think that number will ever increase?
That's a good question. Because I do think it's right that we do get a bit forgotten. We kind of talk about Greenland as if it's a landmass, as if it's territory that is kind of uninhabited, but that's not true. We live there. We have been living there for thousands of years, and Inuit from Canada and Alaska have words that describe the land on the other side where the other Inuits are. That's like a long Inuit knowledge that goes back thousands of years, right? We've been traveling between Canada and Alaska and Russia and Greenland for many, many hundreds of years. I think it's right. I think it's if a poll has been made in Greenland, chances are that it's quite correct because we are not that many people. So it's quite difficult to get off too far on the sides. You have to interview quite a large part of the population in order to have enough data to make statistics out of it. I do think everyone has a formed opinion. I don't think there's a large group of people who haven't thought about it. I think everyone knows what they would like and not would like for their country. And I think it's correct that 94 plus percent of the Greenlandic population do not want Trump to be the political head of our country.
Sarah, is it correct to say Greenlandic population? Is that the correct term for the people that live?
Right. Yeah. So that depends how you're asking. Officially, yes. Grammatically, linguistically, yes, it's correct. We say Galaslit Nunat about our country, which means the land of the people. So we actually call ourselves Galaslit. Nunat means land or country. So Galaslit Nunat means the land that belongs to the people, specifically this people. Yeah. So,
and you mentioned that there are not that many people. I mean, there's only about 57,000 people in all of Greenland. And to give our listeners some context, that's about the size of Charlottesville, Virginia, in terms of population. So my question is, I mean, where do most of the people live? Do they live all in one kind of town, or what does it look like?
That's also a very good question. If you would have asked 80 years ago, the answer would be very different from what it is now. Part of the colonial history that Trump is also referring to at times that we have with Denmark includes a history of very traumatic and troublesome forced resettlements of people. This is a history that is similar, yet delayed, compared to the indigenous history of the United States. So it's comparable. You have similar stories of people being forced to move. Now, the difference is that Inuit in Greenland, we're the majority. We're not a minority in our own country, in our own native land. We are the majority of the people of Greenland. So at this point, the tendency is still the same as it was when it was starting. It started as kind of a forced political enforced tendency to have people move from all over the coast to larger towns. The process has been slowed, but the tendency is still the same. We're gathering, and the prognosis is that in 50 to 100 years, we'll probably mostly be in 3 to 4, maybe 5 towns on the coast, especially the southwest coast of Greenland.
And Siri, it's amazing, when you're talking about the history of Greenland and the people there. I have a question, what was it, 2009? I guess Greenland... I guess there was a vote or some kind of resolution where they could declare independence from Denmark, if I know that correctly, right? 2009. Mm-hmm. So I just saw where the King of Denmark visited just lately. I don't know if it was yesterday, day before. I'm not quite sure. But I saw where he just visited. And the question for you, based on what you've seen in America, based on the dialogue of Trump and what he said right now, with the King of Denmark visiting, meeting with the Prime Minister, I believe, of Greenland, do you think that it's actually had the reverse effect with Trump coming out, where it's now drawn Greenland and Denmark closer together? Do you ever see where there's going to be a referendum where Greenland actually declares independence, for itself now, based on what you're seeing, right, with these historical flows, what Trump is saying, and things of that nature at this point?
Wise men and women would advise me not to guess things about the future. But
well, there's always the hypotheticals, right? I wonder if I wonder when there's a threat from the outside, or somebody's verbally, identifying Greenland as a target, which Trump has actually done. Do you sense that with the visit from the king that there's a more sense of staying closer to Denmark and things of that nature moving forward?
Right. Well, I think that the relationship to the king is, and that might seem weird in America, but that is not necessarily as closely connected to staying loyal to the kingdom. So specifically, the King of Denmark has had a very personal relationship to Greenland. He was part of the Sirius group, that the patrol that crosses the inland ice. He's been to Greenland for long periods of time, which seem to have been, from the outside, on a very superficial level, it seems like he's kind of been to Greenland and had these long periods of time where he had the chance to reflect about his role, about life as a royal person, a king, in a becoming king. So I think I think we have to be careful with saying that him visiting is the same as saying we'll stay together forever. It's also part of he's quite a new king, so it is part of what he has to do. They have to come and visit the Faroe Islands. They have to come and visit Greenland and kind of wave the flag and say, I'm also your king still, or so on and so forth. I don't think that if Greenland chooses to become independent, which I have to admit, I hope happens one day.
There we go. Excellent.
Right. I don't think that has anything to do with the relationship to the King of Denmark.
Yeah. Why, in your opinion, there are two questions. Why is it not independent at this point? And the second question is, what do you think Americans and Europeans should know that they don't know about Greenland, about the Inuit? Did I say that right? Hopefully I did. The people that live there.
Why is Greenland not independent? I don't know why Greenland is not independent, apart from the historical not having been given the opportunity until 2009. And then since then, we've been struggling to just make ends meet financially for our country.
Yeah.
It's a large landmass. It's really expensive. And it's a country that's been, like, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, we were developing the society to become Danish. And it wasn't until the end of the 70s, 1979, that we had got home rule government, that we realized we can administer our country on our own. And at this point, that process of making the society as close to the Danish one, it was so implemented already. Those thoughts and ideas and ideals were implemented at that time, which means, and I don't know if you know this about Denmark, but this is one of the societies where the public is, the stage is big, right? The public takes care of so many things that are ensuring safety for women, for children. Everyone gets an education. Everyone gets healthcare. You don't ever have to think about what happens to the sizes of the bills if you are unlucky enough to get sick. So you don't have to think about these things. And so that's quite an expensive standard to be setting for a developing country as Greenland. It's also a country that has had the business relations be very monopolized. So all our businesses in Greenland have been aimed towards Denmark only. And then the businesses has then been going from Greenland through Denmark to the rest of the world, right? So I think we're not independent because we're afraid we're not ready yet. And we want to be safe before we want to be independent. Does that make sense?
It does.
Absolutely.
To be honest, I've lived in Wyoming for 4 years. Maybe you can hear on my accent that I've spent some time in the U.S. I took my BA at University of Wyoming. And I have to say that visiting the indigenous people of the United States and Canada has really opened my eyes to how violent it is around the world, the way that people are being treated and have been treated, and how much trauma these societies are dealing with and coping with. And it's very statistically visible that we struggle with some of the same things.
Yeah.
But I have had opportunities in my life, and I'm not sure that same chance belongs to everyone who's Indigenous in the United States or Canada.
That's a profound answer, Siri. And I mean, it's a heavy discussion when you talk about another country saying they want to take over another country, when you're talking about the different traditions, when you're talking about even the different political beliefs, right, Siri? And And when you're looking at Greenland, what's interesting to me and looking at the pictures of Greenland. Now, Amy and I have been fortunate to travel around the world, but I haven't been to Greenland yet, Siri. So I have a bit of a more fun question because I know we've been pretty heavy right now with some of the things we've been discussing. So I was looking at the city of Nuuk. I believe is that the proper pronunciation?
Nuuk.
So Nuuk, and the only thing I knew about Greenland, Siri, was when I was Air Force back in '94, I would have to make high frequency radio calls to Thule Air Base. That was the thing that I knew about Greenland, is that I could actually call from the state of New Jersey all the way to Thule with a high frequency radio and on our aircraft. And this is 1994, so that ages me, Thule, right? That ages me. So I want to ask you this question about Greenland. You're talking about Nuuk, and you're talking about Thule and your air base, which has now changed, obviously. What is your favorite place in Greenland? If Amy and I wanted to say, Siri, we want to go to Greenland, is there one place we need to stand, one place we need to go that people don't know about, that you're like, this really captures our landscape, our people, our heritage? Where do we go when Amy and I go to visit Greenland next year? Where would we go?
That is such a hard question. I've been fortunate enough to be head of lights and sound for a children's play that went all the way around the coast of Greenland. So we went to 37 different places in Greenland.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That is awesome.
So I've actually been most of the places where there are people living in Greenland. And there are so many beautiful places. Now, I'm a Numiok, right? I was born and raised in Nuuk. When I talk about home, I think about the mountain Selmitiak that you can see in the background, and how it has a different color every day because there's so much structure in the atmosphere between where you're at in the town and then to the view of the mountain, which is some kilometers away. So my favorite place is probably Mygedalen in Nuuk. It's a Danish term, and we call it that. It literally translates to the Valley of the Mosquitoes. But it's a really nice.
That would be my favorite place.
It's a nice place because it's full of these colorful houses, and then if you walk on top of a mountain, you have the view to Nordlandet, so a very characteristic coastal view where Hensile came 300 years ago, and then if you go on top of that mountain, you can kind of get a view over to Selmitiak, that beautiful mountain. But apart from that, there are so many beautiful places. Qaqortoq is worth a huge mention. And just like the south of Greenland, Igaliku is beautiful. If you go to Ilulissat, the sounds of the ice from the ice fjord is just amazing, an amazing experience on its own. And then I was lucky to go to Qaanaaq, the town that was forcibly moved from where Thule Air Base is, and then became Qaanaaq. And you know what's interesting about Qaanaaq is that nowhere in Greenland are the houses lined the way that you do it in the US, where the streets are completely linear. Everything's a square, right? But in Qaanaaq it is. But if you walk on top of a hill in Qaanaaq, you get to see some of the oldest mountains on the entire planet, and everything is just ice. And it's so beautiful and it's so haunting. And when I went there, which is almost 20 years ago, which also ages me, I guess, we couldn't get in or out. There's one flight a week. That's it. So we came on a Wednesday and we left the following Wednesday.
Wow.
And it was amazing. And there is not a lot of internet, and it's just really, really good for the soul.
I would imagine the most southern part of Greenland is the warmest. What is the warmest it will get?
So you've been in the inland climate, right, of the U.S. Of course, in Greenland, we don't really have that because it's all ice when you get past the first couple of mountains. However, we do have those deep fjords. So there's a huge difference between, like, Nuuk is very windy, but the temperatures are quite stable. So they don't go like that high or that low. If you go into the bottom of Nuuk Fjord, you can, on a summer day, it will be 15 to maybe even 19 degrees, and you'll wear shorts and a t-shirt.
So that's 19 degrees Celsius.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Just checking.
Of course. That's great.
It's amazing. It's almost as if, as Amy and I are asking about this, first of all, I want to visit. I mean, that's now probably on my list, right? Is to come to Greenland if I can. If they would allow me now, Siri.
I'm sure you're welcome.
Oh my! Well, it's almost as if the landscape, the topography, the heritage, the people define who they are, right? Siri, as you're talking about your heritage, how you grew up, visiting the 37 sites, the beauty of it, and you just rambled off 7, 8 different things, and I was trying to write them down, but you might have helped me with the spelling of all the places that you were talking about based in your language. I think that's what's so incredible about you coming and agreeing to talk to us is that you seem to represent those values. And when you said that you think it's correct that 94% of the people in Greenland value their independence, I find it incredible that the United States, which is based on self-determination, on the fact that we're able to identify ourselves and to break away from people we find oppressive, that our country right now would be wanting to do that to a country that it looks like it values its independence or the way that they're actually structured and the way that they live their lives, where how dare we identify that as something we can take. And I think that's what struck me about talking to you, Siri, is that it sort of comes through with you, right? In the way that you presented your love of your country, your love of Greenland. And I think that's what I asked when my first question about the poll. And I guess it's my follow-up, and I know Amy is going to have the final question here, for everything. Based on the politics of Greenland, I don't see where it would really fall in line with Donald Trump politics or the right here in the United States. And I think that's what's interesting to me, is I don't think there's been any long-term thinking about what it means to, if the United States actually were to somehow take Greenland, which Amy and I are very much against, by the way. This is ludicrous that a president of the United States would say this. But do you see that also, that the politics of Greenland don't match with Trump at all? I mean, would you think that's a fair question, or it's a fair, I would say, perspective on how you presented Greenland right now?
100%. We are not individualists. We're not even, we're trying to learn to be capitalist at the same time as trying to treat our community safely. And that's a difficult exercise in a very individualistic, capitalistic world. So definitely we're so different culturally. When I think of Trump, I think of someone who's ready to burn all the bridges in order to succeed and in order to get his way. And in Greenland, we just think really differently. We always consider our community before we make choices on behalf of our people. It's just, and you would think that I'm aware that former presidents of the United States have been more mindful, but it is a different culture, and I think that Trump is just the very extreme version of fundamental American values that make extremists like him possible to exist. Which sounds really harsh. There's a lot of people I care about in the U.S. and who do not agree with Trump, and there are even people I care about who do agree with most of what Trump is saying. But Greenland is Greenland's, you can do and choose whomever you want for your country, but politically, democratically, societally, we choose something else. And I really hope that the message gets through that we are our own people, and we don't want anything to do with Trump. Open for business, not for sale.
Oh,
wow.
That's fantastic.
That is like
stated.
the perfect ending, because that is the goal of us even doing this show with Denver and I, is to sort of uplift your voice. And I know you don't speak for all people that live in Greenland, but it's so important that Americans hear from you. And, and I just really thrilled that you came on our show this morning. How often do you get back to Greenland?
I just went 2 weeks ago with my kids, and it was so good. I hadn't been since sometime last year, and it was just really good to know that everyone's still okay. It feels so far away when something like this happens, right? So it was nice to see that everything looks the same and feels the same. So yeah, I just went, and it was great. If you go to Greenland, go in the springtime. A lot of people would go in the summer, but spring is there's still snow on the ground. There's plenty of light. It's beautiful. Still no mosquitoes.
I'm there. Siri, I'm there.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Of course.
Siri, your perspective is so refreshing, and thank you. And thanks for taking your time. It means the world to me and Amy, and thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Holy cow, Amy. What an incredible interview. She was so perceptive, but her perspective on the people, the fact that she's there, she's been everywhere. She's been everywhere. She knows the native history of the country, but again, kudos to the team actually for bringing her in, and to talk to somebody from Greenland with that type of knowledge was pretty cool. And Amy, well done. Well done to you and the team, to find Siri. I just think it's amazing. And as we go forward, if people want to continue with these amazing shows and what we put together, and today, like you and the team, finding Siri and us being able to interview her, you better be signing up on every single podcast that we do. You can go anywhere. You better be subscribing to YouTube. You better be following on our socials, because if you're not, you won't find out about places like Greenland and the best places to go. And I hope everybody can spell all the places she said to go, because I was trying. I don't think I could. But Amy, well done. It was so great to be on Another Truth in a Barrel with you.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers.
You're awesome.
Cheers to Greenland.
Team. Cheers to Greenland.
Mm-hmm.